You know, it's organizations like housing and food security are doing well in their fundraising. Other organizations are somewhat hesitant to raise money. I'm not as important as them right now. And my answer to that is always no. And I'm sure you'll cover that in this today.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just going to hand it over to you now because I know we have a lot to get through.
All
And
right.
the slides will be available and the recording will be posted on our website by next week,
All
both
right.
Valley Community Foundation and Community Foundation for Greater New Haven.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. We'll get started. Welcome. I'm Sharon Danosky, president of Danosky Associates, and I've been working in the nonprofit sector for almost 40 years. 16 of those was as a member of the senior administration for several hospitals. I was also vice president for a $54 million human service organization. While I've never lived through a pandemic of this nature, I don't think any of us have, I have experienced a number of crises in all the organizations where I've worked. 12 years ago, in 2008, I began my own business right at the beginning of the financial crisis. And my business is Danosky Associates. I am so grateful for to the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation for making it possible for us to spend some time together this morning. I'm sure you will all agree they've been doing a yeoman's work in helping area nonprofits cope and work through COVID-19. And so thank you so much for what you're doing. Here are a few housekeeping tips to keep in mind. Everyone's devices are muted to diminish background noise. You'll find a bar where you can ask questions or respond to a poll. There are several polls that we'll be asking you during this. I'm going to kind of make a disclaimer up front. I have to give hats off to Zoom. I think they have stepped up to the plate magnificently. You will probably note by the number of Zoom meetings you've been in the past 2 weeks, everyone is using Zoom. And we've been experiencing a few little glitches here and there that we didn't experience at the very beginning. So please be patient. If we experience one, we'll just power right through it. And these are usually with the polls and the Q&A. They don't respond always as quickly. We'll be asking you a few questions during the session. You use the Q&A bar if you could. And I'd like to ask you to use the Q&A bar more than the chat bar. It's just sometimes tough to toggle back and forth between the two, but we'll make it work, whatever you do. And as Jackie noted, we will be recording this and make it available through the foundations. So, first poll, I'm asking this question a little differently this week. I want you to take a look at what you're wearing today. Have you won something that that you're wearing now more than once this week? Oh, I'm loving this honesty. Yeah, we all have our favorite sweats. We all have our favorite whatever. So 71% of you said yes, and 29% of you said no. So the next question I have is practice using the Q&A box. What is that article of clothing that you have worn more than once? Now, I'm not getting some of the answers on that one. Ah, here we go. A black turtleneck. Hey, it's basic black. Why don't you wear it every day? Jeans, favorite, sweats, fleece pants. Your sweatshirt is ready to walk away by itself. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, and just gets us a little in the practice. It also helps me to know that you're out there, because it's weird doing a webinar. You're kind of talking to a screen, and so this is my way of connecting with you and knowing that you're all out there. Now, another poll, a serious one this time. How many of you are on the front lines providing some type of service, as Jackie said, transportation, health, children, even animal shelters? And how many of you are what I like to call organizations that are helping us cope and providing comfort for us, such as libraries, cultural organizations, museums? All right. Close to 50-50, 43% are on the front lines and 57% are what I'm calling comfort and moral support. Now, I'd like to know a little bit about who is out there. How many executive directors? How many development directors are the person responsible for raising money? How many board members? And the other category is other. All right, a few more responders. So the majority are board members. Wow, thank you for being here. I am really impressed. 25% executive directors, 20% development directors, they're all out there actually raising money, and 15% other. So thank you for doing that. COVID-19 has brought about so many changes in our lives. Our heads are spinning. While not all of you are on the front lines caring for people, there are many of you on the front lines trying to get money to your organizations that you need to provide the services. There are a whole host of questions like, do I postpone or cancel my fundraising events for the rest of the year? How will I make up that revenue? Is it the right time to even ask donors to give with everyone so concerned and preoccupied? Does it seem too forward or pushy to send out an appeal letter? I feel funny calling donors right now. What will happen when this subsides? With the stock market in such swing and so many people having lost money in their 401ks, will they even still want to give? In the time we have together, we're going to try to answer most of your questions. But first, I want to start with the psychology of giving, particularly in crises and disasters. Americans have always been generous during a crisis. In the past century, starting with World War II, people have dug deep in their pockets to get through. I love this poster. All you need give is money. Most of us are not first responders. We're not on the front lines, but we want to do something. After 9/11, there were two schools of fundraising thought. The first was, out of respect to those who have lost loved ones, we should curtail our year-end giving and allow people to support those affected by 9/11. There, however, was another school of thought, and that was show respect, but remind people that our nonprofits are the underpinning of our society and need support in addition to those supporting those who were harmed by 9/11. For those who were in the second school of thought, and I have to confess, I was one of those, 2001 literally turned out to be one of the best years for philanthropy. It broke records. And those who asked for money had their best fundraising year ever. The reason is people want to give. People want to help. They don't want to buy luxury goods or vacations. They take stock and think of their fellow man. The same thing happened after Hurricane Katrina and even after the financial crisis. People who were out there asking and people who particularly were going to their own donors for their own organization were experiencing really great fundraising success. But first things first, the first thing you need to do is to assess where you are. What is coming up on your agenda? What events do you have planned? How far out are they? Were invitations sent? Have you secured sponsors? Outline where things are and what questions you have to address. Were you in the process of sending out an appeal? I've talked to a number of people who said, yeah, we were about to send out, a March appeal and we've pulled back. Are you planning your appeal? What is your appeal schedule look like right now? What routine communications were you planning for your constituencies and your donors? What were you going to communicate? What is necessary for you to communicate? Should you put those on hold? Should you change the messaging? What are the current financial needs of your organization? What do you anticipate the needs to be once things have stabilized. It is most important for you to understand this information because the most meaningful communication with your constituents are those that are authentic, factual, and useful. So before you send out mixed messages, understand where you are, what you're planning to do, and what you will need. This is no time to be shooting from the hip. You also need to act quickly. You don't need to spend days, or even hours doing this, but your organization has to be on the same page. The best fundraising happens when there is a compelling need and clarity of message. Question. How many of you have canceled or postponed your events? All right. The majority of you, overwhelming majority of you, have canceled your events, 83%. I want to say you don't need your event to raise money. If you have an event scheduled within the next several months, go ahead and cancel it. It's all right. You can still raise the money and even some more. Contact every sponsor that you've had. Let them know what you're doing, how you're handling the situation, let them know how you're coping, and share that this event is critical to your ongoing support, particularly at this time. Ask them if they would give their sponsorship support without this event. I have to share with you, this was like a couple of years ago. A colleague of mine who, like me, doesn't really like events as a way of raising money, and he was looking at how much staff time was dedicated to events. So he decided, what would happen if I canceled the event? He called every single one of his corporate sponsors and said, would you still give at the same level if we didn't have an event and you didn't have to come? 100% said yes. They didn't need the event to give to their organization. Next, reach out to every table captain, every table host, and ask them the same question. Then reach out to every single donor. One organization I know who always does the fund the need where you raise the hand and give outright, they also reached out to all those people and asked them if they would give the same level that they had the year before. They all said yes. So expand your reach. Tell your donors how much you rely on their support, and you can't afford to lose that revenue. I don't personally recommend holding a virtual or online auction. I think people are just happy to give to you outright. And I'm not sure that people want to spend the money on, vacations or experiences because so much is up in the air. And while, certain organizations are having great success, I say just go out and ask for the money. Remember the psychology of giving. In discussions with several of my colleagues over the past several days and several seasoned development professionals, the general consensus is that all events will most likely be canceled through the end of the year. So if you are still thinking of putting on an event in November, you really need to think twice about doing it. I'm not saying you have to cancel right away, but really don't predicate your fundraising on that. But keep it in the back of your mind. I'm not sure Dr. Oz should weigh in on everything, but he did say the other day that that he goes to a lot of events and he won't be going to any event this year, and he most likely will not be going to an event anytime in 2021 either. People are really nervous about gathering together until we have a vaccine, and even then we're not sure what this is going to be afterwards. So what I want to say to you is that we need to raise money differently, and not having an event is not necessarily a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it might help to transition to a far more sustainable and effective way of raising money. To all of those people who are experiencing difficulty and need to raise money now, on the front lines, just go for it. But you do have to do it thoughtfully and considerately. If you're on the front lines, your message is going to be different than you are if you are a library or museum. But there's no reason that any of you can't be out there raising money right now. Understand and clearly articulate your message. Why do you need to raise money? Are your staff working overtime? Are you having to hire people to work per diem? Are the resources you're counting on drying up? What is going on at your organization? The main question to ask is whether or not your donors think you're essential. And the answer to that is most likely yes, because they've been giving to you. I was on a call last night and one of their board members said, but I've always been taught that you have to have something exciting to ask for. You have to have some project or some great vision. Ordinarily, that would be true. Right now, the fact that you are staying open, that you are providing services, whether or not they're frontline services, feeding and sheltering and taking care of people, or, their comfort and support and getting out, those newsletters with virtual concerts and virtual tours and art exhibits and those kinds of things. Your donors think you are essential and they want to see you stay open. So here's what you need to do. Go into your donor base and make a list. For the first three, who are your major donors? Who are the donors you wish to become major donors? Who are your next tier mid-level donors? Who are your recurring donors who have given to you before and you want them to continue giving to you? Who are your one-time donors? Go into your donor database and make a list. For the first three, I want you to make a list with their phone numbers, text, emails, addresses, physical addresses, whatever you have. Make a list. For the others, just give them a notation in your database. Fundraising is nothing without your list. Most organizations rely on tactics, but real fundraising is built on lists and relationships. This is what we mean when we say donor-centered fundraising or donor-centric fundraising. So take the time to know who your donors are. You can't ask them to support you if you don't know who they are. So I want to ask the next question. How many of you have started calling your donors right now? All right. Well, 43 of you have said yes. That's absolutely terrific. 57% of you, we need to talk. My second question is for those who called your donors. Were they happy to hear from you? Yes or no? Of those that answered, 100% said they were happy to hear from you. I want you to remember that 100% said that they were happy to hear from you. So using the Q&A on the bar, anyone want to share how your donors responded? Anything that they said to you that really stuck out in your mind? One person, when I did this poll, said, I didn't realize that my donors care as much for my organization as I do. No one wants to share. That's okay. Oh, thank you. One person did. So I'm hearing the donor said, are you okay? What do you need? Are you okay? What do you need? And that's what donors do. Thank you, John. And honestly, I didn't put John up to that. That's like the first answer. Oh, another joy says donors said they would give their gifts earlier than scheduled. The few who did respond made major gifts. Are you hearing this? This is absolutely terrific. Absolutely terrific. Several organizations I've talked with over the past couple of weeks have actually told me that their major donors called them and said, what do you need? A home health organization was able to raise over $100,000 in 24 hours. They typically raise $1 million, a little over $1 million a year. In 3 weeks, they raised $525,000, half of what they raise annually. Call your donors. Share what you are doing. You know, what is happening on the front lines? What is your staff experiencing? People want to know. Call your donors. If you are a library, if you are a museum, if you are a symphony, and if you are a shelter, and if you are, you know, a food pantry, a food center, no matter what you are, call your donors. People want to know how you're doing. Ask them if they can help this time if they offer, or if you need the money now, ask them if they would consider making their gift early, if they would consider helping you out in any way. Be prepared for when someone says, what do you need, to tell them. And if you need the resources to keep, you know, open and sending out newsletters and having staff keep your museum clean, up to date, whatever, tell them that. Things don't just shut down and stay on their own. Things still have to be tended, even though people aren't there. All right. The other thing that you need to do is get your appeals out. I'm not advocating for direct mail appeal. I think if you want to do that, that's fine. I'm not saying don't do it. But right now, people are extremely irresponsive. Organizations that I've worked with who have only like less than 1% of their donors ever responding online are finding enormous response from people online. I think there's a practical reason, and that reason is, you know, a number of people, none of you, but a number of people have more times on their hand. And they're looking at email, you know, they're not commuting into and out of the office. So they have that downtime to actually read emails. I have noticed, so I've been sending out quite a few e-newsletters myself. And it's funny because I've been noticing that my open rate is much higher. Usually I got an open rate between 18 to 20%, which I think they consider good. I'm like 25 to 30, 32%. I want to think it's because of how many brilliant things I'm saying in there, but I know what's really happening is they have time to read it. So I think that's what's happening, is that people have some more time. So get your appeal out. Make it short, make it simple. You should have 1 or 2, 3 bullets about how you're handling things and what you need money for. Don't be chatty. Don't make it long. Don't beat around the bush. Be very direct, because that's what people want to hear, just the facts. And here are a few examples I put together. One is for an animal shelter. We fostered all our dogs, but our foster parents need help with providing food. And we've heard some dog owners are afraid they can't keep their dogs. So we need to raise funds now to keep the animals and their owners well. Our musicians are out of work, but they come into your homes every night from their homes. We are trying to compensate our musicians because their concerts have been canceled. The staff at our food center is working double shifts, and we must pay them double time. They are doing this because we made the decision to keep our volunteers safe and not expose them to the virus. We don't have enough masks, surgical gloves. We need your help now. Just basic, brief communications with your donors. So I want to, I titled this next slide, Beyond Fundraising, because our business has always been about relationship building, and true fundraising is about relationships. Too often, I think we have forgotten that. Indeed, we live in such a transactional world. Everything is moving so fast. COVID-19, while it may be moving fast, has actually forced us to slow down a little bit. We already know that from your answers of what you're wearing, that most of you are working from home. And while I know you're all really busy, there are probably a number of you who have more time on your hands. You're not driving to work. Hopefully you have fewer meetings. You don't have to plan that fundraising event. Use that time to build meaningful relationships. You've probably been doing that with your family and your friends these past 3 to 4 or 5 weeks. You're reaching out to them. You're reaching out to cousins across the country, asking them, how are you doing? What are you doing to keep yourselves busy? How are you coping with that? I often hear nonprofits and development directors refer to their donors as part of their organization's family. Then why wouldn't you want to reach out to them? You're reaching out to your family. Your donors are your organization's family. They want to hear from you. You need to call them. So here's what you need to do. Again, take a look at your best donors. Take a look at those donors who give you 80% or 90% of your revenue. That might be 20 or 30 donors, maybe more, maybe less. Start there. Call a few donors every single day. First thing in the morning, right after lunch, mid-afternoon, last thing in the day, whatever works for you. Board members, if among your board, you can split up your donors and each board member be responsible for 4 or 5 donors that you call. Think how many donors you can reach out to. If they aren't there, leave a message, a nice one that's kind and caring, not businesslike, but leave the message as you would leave a message for your friend and your family. Hey, just calling to check in. As a member of our organization's family, we're thinking about you and we hope that you're doing okay, and would love to hear from you if you could give us a call back. I was literally talking with a donor yesterday who said to me, yeah, I've been getting some phone calls. She said, I still screen them. I don't pick up the phone immediately, but when I hear it's from my charity, I'm calling them right back because I want to hear from them. That's what is happening. So show empathy. When you do reach them, then share. First ask how they're doing, then share how you're doing. And believe it or not, I'm even still conducting feasibility studies for campaigns. My first 4 or 5 minutes of every single call with the donor is sharing how we're coping, what we're doing, what we're enjoying, what we're not enjoying. We're just connecting as people. That's who your donors are. They're people that you want to connect with. More than that, they're people who share your values. They're people for whom you both share the same intrinsic interest. You both share the opera. You both share, museums. You both share, the need to provide good services for children. Whatever those values are, you share them. Then share how you're doing and what's happening with the people who work at the organization. They want to hear about them too. If you're keeping all of them employed, let them know. You can let them know how tough that is as well, and what you're doing to make sure you're keeping them employed. We're often, kind of debating and feeling very frustrated by the fact that donors don't understand that nonprofits need operating revenue. Ironically, this is the time they do understand that. The fact that you're keeping your employees working is a big deal. With 16 million Americans unemployed, I think in Connecticut alone, it's 11% of our workforce unemployed. You're keeping your employees working is a good thing, not just for your nonprofit, but for our economy, for the rest of the state, for the rest of the common good. What you're doing is good, and donors recognize that. Then let them know what's happening with your programs. If you've had to cut a number, that's okay. Tell them where you've redeployed the funding that you do have. If you're doing them virtual, let them know, ask their advice. Have you liked this concert we're streaming? Have you enjoyed hearing about the birds that we've been posting online? What are your plans for the future? Be reassuring. If you don't know, you can say, we're working on it. We're working on our plan of how we're going to reemerge when the state reopens. We've got, our board members working on this. At the end of the call, ask them if they would mind if you checked in again in a few weeks. So be authentic. If you are on the front lines, then go ahead and ask for money now. But if you are not on the front lines, don't ask for money. But if they offer to help, as John said in his Q&A, if they say, what do you need? Then be ready to tell them, because that means they want to help you. This is an excellent role for board members to play. Again, because I know board members don't like asking for money, I'm not asking you to ask. I just want you to call your donors and just acknowledge that they've been a wonderful donor, and you just want to make sure they're okay, and you just appreciate how they've been supporting you. Are they receiving your newsletter? Are they enjoying them? If you do that, you will develop relationships with your donors in a way that you have never had before. And not only will that be good now, but that will be great for you when the state, the economy does reopen in whatever fashion it does. And this is how you will build sustaining donors for the long term. If you don't do this now, you're going to lose a lot of your donors because all other organizations that they're involved with will be doing this. So this is what you must do if you are to create a sustainable fundraising program now and in the future. You can't call every single one of your donors. I mean, if you can, hats off to you, but most of you have more donors than you can possibly call. But this is an excellent opportunity for you to generally stay in touch with your donors. And you can do that through your e-communications. But again, you need to be relevant and you have to be meaningful. Speak with an authentic voice. I recently received an email from an organization I know that works with children. First communication I heard with them since sheltering in place became a thing. And the first email I received was this jaunty, save the date for our next event in June. I looked at that email and literally I said, are you kidding me? We have no idea what's going to be happening in June. We have no idea what's happening a few weeks or months from now. What I wanted to hear from them was how they're managing, how they're doing. Are they able to offer any programs virtually at all? Is their staff okay? Is everyone healthy? What are your plans for the next few weeks? Once I knew that, then I'd love to hear stories about how their clients were handling this. Maybe there were some funny stories that they could share with me, or wonderful acts of kindness that they could share with me, poignant things that were coming about because of people supporting them or from their own clients themselves. This is the stuff we're hungry for. Just look at what is trending on Facebook to get a sense of what you should be communicating. And don't be reticent in telling them if you're having difficulties and why. Again, another call I was on with board members, one board member said to me, I've always been told never tell them your vulnerabilities. I'm saying, yes, share your vulnerabilities. This is what makes us human, is when we are willing to open up and share. Tell them, where you're having difficulties. Now, I'm not meaning that you should say, I'm not sure we'll ever be able to reopen. No, tell them what your difficulties are now. Right now, we're able to maintain our staff. We really hope we can continue this. It's tough. We have some financial support coming in, and we hope that that will continue because that will make the difference of whether or not we'll be able to continue offering the virtual programs, as many as we have been, whatever it might be. If they ask how they can help, be ready to say yes and tell them how. So some of the fun things I've been hearing and I've been seeing on the emails that have been sent around, in addition to being authentic, is a library is taking me on virtual tours of museums all over the world. A symphony is posting excerpts from past concerts. A chamber ensemble is getting their ensemble together and performing virtually, which is just amazing to me how they can do that. We've also seen those wonderful Zooms of children and college choirs performing. An historical society in my town is sharing stories, what happened on this date years ago, just kind of fun stuff. And a health organization sent me information about how to set up my home office and make sure it functions ergonomically. And a land trust sent me a whole thing on the birds they're seeing out on the trails, with kind of a funny little thing at the end that showed a sports stadium with 3 commentators noting what a huge play, and the caption was 3 people sheltering at home looking at their bird feeder. It was really quite comical. Someone did say maybe that's because you like birds, but I don't know. I thought it was funny. So I want to say everyone can raise funds now. If you have a mission you believe in and you need financial support to continue that mission, then ask. The people you will be asking are people who will already donate to you. This is not the time to acquire new donors. Rather, ask those who believe in and have supported your mission all along. I think it's a good time to remind you that currently, nonprofit organizations typically lose 50% of their donors every year. You don't need to acquire new donors. You need to reach out and retain the donors you have. Doing that alone will increase your revenue. I recognize that for those of you who are not on the front lines, it's a more passive ask, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask. In your appeals, online appeals, be sure to include a line that says something like, we may be working remotely, but we are trying to do all we can to reach out to those who care about our mission, to bring you a little comfort and joy. We would love to hear from you, whether you are enjoying what we're sharing, and if in any way this has been a benefit during these times, please consider a contribution so that we may continue and be sure to continue our mission in the days and weeks ahead. One strategy you might consider is the $10 ask. Listen, could you give $10 at this time? So if you send out weekly appeals or weekly newsletters, one can ask for $10. Your next newsletter should tell your donors what you did with the money they gave. Thank you for your response last week. Because of you, our staff continues to work. We're able to put out another newsletter. We're able to, go on to these trails and maintain them. We were able, to ask a couple of musicians to play something, whatever that might be. I'm not sure what your organizations all ask for money for, but I know that you need it, and you need to tell your donors how you've been using the money, even if it's just to keep the lights on. You need to let them know where their money went and how important that was. I'm going to say that I'm not a fan of virtual events. I am also not a fan of what's coming out in terms of the mini campaigns or pivot campaigns, or anything that is contrived. People have been responding with extraordinary generosity when they've been asked to help. You don't need to think of a special purpose to persuade people to give. If you need funding for day-to-day operations, then raise that money, because money that is flexible and free to be used wherever the need is greatest is the best money of all, no strings attached. And this is true for any and all organizations. Don't contrive a special project to raise funds for at this time. Your donors are interested in your mission. They want to see you succeed. I think there is an inherent reticence that board members and even staff have about reaching out to donors. You're imposing on their time. You're bothering them. The one thing that most organizations overlook is that your organization is your donor's charity of choice. Your organization is your donor's charity of choice. They have been giving to you for years, sometimes decades. They share your values. They care about what you do. They think you're doing a good job. Though you may not stay in touch with them as often as you could in the past, they are staying in touch with you more than you probably realize. And if you simply ask for help, simply tell them that keeping your doors open and your services available has been a struggle. They will help you. The past 3 weeks truly has shown extraordinary generosity throughout the country. Despite how economically uncertain times are, fundraising is breaking records. Donors do not need a campaign or an event to support your mission. Why do you? What really good fundraisers know is how to stay close to their donors. Organizations that raise considerable money put their time and purpose toward that purpose. Right now is a huge opportunity that's been created for us. This is the opportunity for your organization to take a different approach, to share with your donors, and to get closer with your donors, and to let them know that they are making a difference, to share your values and the values you have in common, and to build meaningful relationships. If you do that, then you may not need to do those fundraisers anymore, or at least not as many. You also have to plan for when things are stabilized. You have to take into consideration what we all collectively have gone through. You need to acknowledge it in your future appeals, not in, what you usually had planned. Don't take your appeal that you were going to send out in March and plan to send it out in May or June. It's not going to work. You really have to tailor your appeal to what your donors' experience has been and what your donors want to hear from you. We often say to our fundraising clients that, you need to use the word you in all your appeals. Even more is that important today than it was before. You need to share, has your organization changed? It will have changed as a result of COVID-19. How has that changed what you do or what you're communicating or how you're interacting with your donors? Is it changing the way you are delivering services or programs or information in the future? If so, how so? What things are you exploring that you weren't exploring before? How might you be better prepared today than you were 6 months ago? And how has your donors made a difference in all of that? Share that information with your donors when you're sending future appeals. It is once again using that authentic voice. Stay away from the platitudes or business as usual assumptions. What they want to know is, how have you survived? What did you learn? What does the future hold? And invite your donors to join you as you forge a slightly different path. None of us knows what the future holds, but there is something that we can be sure of, that our humanity will get us through. Americans have always been generous, as Alex de Tocqueville noted when he visited our country in the early 1800s. That generosity abounds today, but it can't be taken for granted. You need to stay close to your donors, build the relationship they want to have with your organization. And if you do, they will stay in touch with you and continue to support you. And I promise you, with their support, you will reemerge stronger than ever. At this time, I'd also like to express my heartfelt appreciation for everything you all are doing to keep our community safe, well, and strong. You're all doing an amazing job. And so many of you are my unsung heroes. So you have my heartfelt gratitude. And you have the heartfelt gratitude of all your donors. So talk to them. I'd now like to open it up to any questions or comments you might have. Anything you want to share? Any questions you might have? I have John Pronto, who's with the Shoreline Trolley Museum, wants to say thank you to all the frontline folks for what you're doing. Thanks, John. I know that's very heartfelt, so thank you very much. Thank you, Hal. All right. Anyone else have anything they want to share at this time? Masha, in the middle of a capital campaign. Yikes, huh? Yeah, a couple of my clients are in the middle of a capital campaign. It depends what phase of the campaign you're in. I think the most important thing is to stay in touch with those donors. A couple of ideas that I've been using is I've been using the time for virtual cultivation. So just kind of getting donors into a virtual Zoom meeting where they can share and just what's going on. Some donors are still in the position to give. So if you're in the, major gifts or quiet phase, don't hesitate to ask still, because, the campaigns are, a long-term process. I think we can learn from our experience in 2008 through 2010. Those organizations that were in campaigns, they slowed down significantly. They didn't stop. Some of them took 5 years to complete, but don't abandon it. Just stay in touch with your donors and keep talking to them. And when they're in the position to be able to support you, they will. So just, it's going to take longer, but don't abandon it. What is your opinion of offering other services to the community, not in direct alignment with what we do now. Keith, I don't necessarily recommend it. I think this is a time to really stay focused on your mission. Don't deviate through your mission. If you can promote other services who aren't aligned with your mission, that's a good way to provide value-added services. But I wouldn't really recommend veering much from your mission right now. Tips on using video. Short video clips that can be fun, that can be inspiring are great. I love including them in whatever e-newsletter you send out. One of my clients is a symphony, and the executive director is a vocalist. He just sent out to all his donors a inspiring rendition of When You Walk Through the Storm, Hold Your Head Up High, and it was really powerful. Okay, so Keith's giving me a little bit more information. For example, providing funds to families from our donors for food, rent. I don't know what your mission is, but I do want to say, if any of you have questions that you want to ask me, I invite you to reach out to me at Sharon@Danosky.com. That's Sharon@Danosky.com, or I have up on my slide info@Danosky.com, and I'm happy to answer your questions offline. So Keith, why don't you email me and I can get a little bit better sense of what you're asking. Tiny nonprofits, 5-person board that support a voucher program. Marlena, next week, my workshop is on boards and the work they should do during a crisis. Please tune into that one because I address those kinds of questions exactly. Basically, you need money now. Marlena, go ask for it. It's there. All right. I don't want to go. I've got a couple of more minutes. Thank you. Thank you for everyone for your nice comments. Here's good. Anything you can add about the great good? Good time for this, consistent messaging. Organizations can use the platform for peer-to-peer fundraising now through May 31st. The Great Give is a good way to do it because it mobilizes a lot of that support. Exactly. Don't try to be gimmicky. Just move people toward doing that. Get into your communications and your e-giving in advance of how important this is, and absolutely go for it full throttle. Absolutely. Thanks, Keith. How to transition from free events offered online to some with compensation. Really good question, Joy. And I'm not sure that that you want to do that. I think if you can continue free events and ask people after whatever events you're doing virtually, get out an e-appeal and ask them if any of this was value to them. Would they give you some support? Would they be willing to make a contribution? The contribution helps you continue these kinds of events and continues giving out information. So I wouldn't charge for the event, but I would do a follow-up appeal that asks people to contribute. All right. Thank you very much. And again, if any of you want to communicate with me offline, email me and I would be more than happy to answer your questions at that time. You've been wonderful. Thank you so much. And look for us next week. We're talking about the role of the board in this crisis. And there's some really good recommendations in there of how to move your board into a COVID-19 powerhouse. So thank you and have a great day. And as John said, thank you to all of you. And frontline workers, we are so indebted to you. But to all of you who are doing so much to keep the fabric of our society thriving, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Have a great day. Bye-bye, everyone.